President Joe Biden, keeping in with his political pandering, as he's always done throughout his entire political career, which is to go with whatever is the dominant, most popular narrative of the day. Back in the 90s, that was tough on crime.
It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said, rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate.
So Joe Biden prided himself in being one of the premier architects of modern mass incarceration and the police state that then, fast forward to 2020, he ran on a platform that was centered on combating the very system that he built from the ground up.
Joe Biden, Black Lives Matter, period. I'm not afraid to say it. Inequities have to be met head on. African Americans need a fair shake when it comes to economic opportunity, healthcare, criminal justice, education, and housing. That's why if I'm elected, we'll get COVID under control by listening to the science. We'll raise the minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour. We'll root out systemic racism in our criminal justice system, end cash bail, decriminalize marijuana, and automatically expunge prior convictions. Together we can fix this. Let's build back better. But I can't do it without you, so I'm asking for your vote.
Mama, I know I'm a demon. It ain't nothing she could do but pray for me.
Because we as Americans and the rest of the world have the memory of goldfish, and we cannot look 2 weeks in the past or 2 weeks into the future, we elected him and took him at his word that he was going to champion for the civil rights of Black, brown, women, all sorts of oppressed individuals in the United States. And in keeping with his virtue signaling, pandering behavior.
I want to ask you about your running mate. I don't know if you saw, well, I saw the day that the news report broke that Amy Klobuchar was being vetted, and a lot of people on social media, they're not too happy about that. And it's because they want your running mate to be a Black woman. I don't know if you saw the op-ed in the Washington Post by some of the leading Black women voices in this country, and they feel since Black women are such a loyal voting bloc, and Black people saved your political life in the primaries this year, they have things they want from you, and one of them is a Black woman running mate. What do you say to them?
What I say to them is that I'm not acknowledging anybody who is being considered, but I guarantee you there are multiple Black women being considered. Multiple.
Well, you know, thanks so much. That's really our time. I apologize.
You can't do that to Black media.
I can't do that to white media and black media because my wife has to go on at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I extended the voting rights 25 years. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. Come on. Take a look at the record.
All right, thank you so much.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. President Biden doesn't see black people as a heterogeneous, diverse tapestry of people. He sees black people as a monolith. And not just a monolith, a one-dimensional monolith of tokens. Black people are just tokens to him. They're objects. He told us to look at his voting record. Oh, let's do that, shall we? No, really, let's go take a fucking look. Like, actually, Biden, you don't want us to take a look at your record. Because your record, in terms of black Americans, is fucking egregious. What are you talking about? Oh, my God. And, at Charlemagne, it's like, we don't want him to choose, tokenistic people. It's dangerous. I do think point a specific person out. Don't just say we want anybody who's a black woman. Find the right woman whose track record you can stand by. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck with more Kamala Harris's or Kamala Harris's or whatever the fuck her name is. We're going to get stuck with more women like that who don't stand for women. And now, look, we got this Kentanji Brown who can't even define what a woman is.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
So that means she doesn't even know what a woman is? How the fuck can we expect her to stand for us? She can't. If you cannot define a woman, you don't stand for women. Saying that you don't know what a woman is in 2022 is the most misogynist, and you're outing yourself as a straight up misogynist. If you are a woman who stands... Oh, and here's another thing. He wanted to choose a black woman, but if we don't know what a woman is, how do we know that Kentanji Brown meets that standard? Do we know? Does anyone know? Is she a woman? Did anyone check her genitals? Because apparently in 2022, we don't know what the fuck a woman is. This is a problem. It's a problem. This is why you don't just want any black woman. You want to choose a candidate and say, we want this woman. Because then we're going to get stuck with Kamala Harris, who kept black men in prison for marijuana charges beyond their time so she could exploit them for cheap prison labor. Or we're going to get, this Kentanji Brown who puts the sexual proclivities of males over the health, well-being, and safety of children. This is why tokenism is a problem. This is why it's dangerous. It's dangerous for everybody, even the communities that it's supposed to represent. It's a problem.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It's history in the making as President Biden vows to make good on his campaign pledge to nominate the first black woman to the Supreme Court.
The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court. It's long overdue in my view.
CBS News has learned top contenders include federal appeals court judge Kentanji Brown Jackson, a Harvard Law School graduate and former clerk for Breyer, who spoke about that experience in 2017.
It was an incredible experience just to be in the room while the justice grappled with some of the most difficult and consequential legal issues of the day.
He has just nominated to the bench Justice Kentanji Brown, a very concerning black female Supreme Court nominee justice. This was a federal judge who had a history of being highly lenient on the wrong types of crime. Yes, we do need criminal justice reform in this country. You know where we don't need criminal justice reform? On leniency in sentencing for upper middle class and wealthy, well-to-do white men who commit crimes against women and children. But just like the good handmaiden that she is, Kentanji Brown has been very clear who she stands for. And it turns out she stands for the very men who used her as a token for virtue signaling. Men like Joe Biden who sniff and creep on children and women and make everybody feel uncomfortable.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, nice.
Great.
Great.
Okay, got some more family. Come on in. Yeah, we got a crowd. Sure. Yeah, we got a crowd. Sure. Okay. Someone go on.
Grandpa's one of those guys.
That's nice of you.
No, I'm not saying. He knows I mean.
Oh,
I genuinely mean.
that's good to hear.
Girls, let's come back in with one big group shot. Come on in.
Do you know what my dad used to say? Your granddaughters have one important job. Take care of their pop. Okay, don't you girls stand right in the front between your grandma and me? She's entitled. She's entitled. This is a long day. A lot of walking. That's right in by Don't tell me what you have to. All right, here we go. Here we go. That's right in by Don't tell me what you have to. Now, are you getting in this picture?
Do I still hold five?
Right over here. There you go. You can put it away if you want. Pleasure to meet you.
Please looking right here.
Okay, so tell me about you.
His wife, Holly.
Hi, Holly. How are you? Now, Holly, you come over to my side. You come over to this side. I want you next to me. I want you next to me. Oh, yeah, sister, you come over to this side. Sister. Come on over this side. Okay? Come on, sis. You get right in the middle with me. You go right over here. Over this way. Mom, you get right in the middle. Come on, Dad.
Members, your mom.
Okay, here you go. So many beautiful girls in Sweden. You got one job. My father used to say, for real, keep your boys away from your sister. That's the job. A hard job keeping the boys away from your sister. Like you had a beautiful sister, you keep the boys away from your sister. That's the job. Remember what I
Kentanji Brown has made it very clear that it is the sexual deviancy and degeneracy of males that she is most interested in protecting. First and foremost, it is clear that she is angled towards protecting autogynephiles and autogynephilic interests, also those of pedophiles. And as we know, there is a lot of interconnection between pedophilia and autogynephilia, because if the whole argument is to supporting autogynephilia is that it's who they are, it's a sexuality, it's a sexual orientation, it's just something that they can't change, and rather than try to change them and try to address their mental illness to align with reality, we must instead fix reality to align with their mental illness and with their delusion. And it is only a hop, skip, and a jump before we make it over to pedophilia, which we already see movements in virtuous pedophiles which claim the exact same thing that is being said about autogynephiles, that pedophilia is a sexual orientation that cannot be changed.
In fact, researchers make a distinction. Pedophilia refers to an attraction to prepubescent children. There has to be another step to become a molester. So you could have a sexuality, which is really now how researchers are thinking about pedophilia, but that doesn't necessarily mean you act on it.
Strongly that he has never transgressed against a child. Is she wrong to believe that?
Yes.
And you know that because?
Because I'm not making this up. It's not fake. I'm not making this up.
I'm sorry you're struggling, Jasmine. You know I care a lot about you.
You give no validity to what she's saying at all.
I believe what Gary said.
And we have to accommodate these people on just the basis of who they are, and that they cannot, be persecuted for things, immutable traits and qualities. Or, in other words, that the sexual proclivities of males takes precedence once again over the safety, well-being of women and children. Let's take a look at Kentanji's position and her answering when she got hit with basic, straightforward questions during her congressional review confirmation hearings.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
The danger of appointing people on the basis of identity politics is that these people, like Kentanji Brown, Kamala Harris, understand where their loyalties must lie. They understand that it is not for their conviction, it is not for their political history or their track record or their, behavior on behalf of the community. It is not that they've been held to such an exceptionally high standard that they met, a standard which they met time and time again and they sustained. No, when we elect people and appoint people on the basis of identity politics, they understand that to maintain their position is to fulfill the role that they've been given, which is to virtue signal on behalf of those who gave them the position. In this case, old, creepy men like Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who has such a disdain for true victims, who even talks about, with disgust, people who have been victimized by a system. But no, when he's looking at, let's continue to soften up for creepy white men and the sexual proclivities of white men.
Senator Cruz was asking you at the end of his time in questionings about United States versus Stewart. This is the case where Neil Stewart tried to cross state lines to rape another person's 9-year-old daughter. He had 6,700 images and videos of egregious and brutal child pornography. The government recommended 97 months. The guidelines said 97 to 121 months. You came in at 57 months. Senator Cruz asked you why. The chairman wouldn't let you answer. I thought maybe you'd like to answer now.
Thank you, Senator. No one case can stand in for a judge's entire record. I have sentenced more than 100 people in a variety of egregious circumstances. In every case, and especially cases that involve the kinds of acts that you're talking about, the kinds of evidence that I had to deal with as a judge, in every case, I am balancing the factors that Congress has determined are appropriate and required for a judge to make a determination. The data points that Senator Cruz pointed to that you may have in front of you don't account for all of the information that was before me as a judge and the authority that you all, Congress, and your prior confirmation when I was a district judge provided for me to exercise my judgment, and I treated those cases and every case very seriously and imposed a sentence that was sufficient but not greater than necessary to promote the purposes of punishment.
It is a problem. We cannot trust these women because they have loyalties to those who fast-tracked them to this position, not on the basis of merit, not on the basis that the community is, called these women forward and demanded that they be installed. No, they're puppets, they're figureheads. We cannot trust that these women are going to stand for what is right and what is needed.
Would it surprise you to learn that Mr. Stewart's a recidivist? He was warrants issued again for his arrest just 3 years after you sentenced him.
Would it surprise me?
Yeah, would it surprise you?
You know, Senator, there is data in the Sentencing Commission and elsewhere that indicates that there are serious recidivism issues. And so among the various people that I've sentenced, I'm not surprised that there are people who reoffend.
So some Democratic senator tried to come to her rescue after Kentanji Brown was grilled openly during the congressional hearings, and she made her look awful. They really skewered her. They really held her to the fire of her own egregious track record.
Let me ask you about the Hawkins case. You and I talked about this yesterday. You've been able to think about it overnight. This is a case where you had an 18-year-old who possessed and distributed hundreds of images of 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and you gave him, frankly, a slap on the wrist sentence of 3 months.
Senator,
do you regret it?
I don't remember whether it was distribution or possession. In
it was
the law,
both. Do you regret it?
In the law, there are different crimes that people commit.
Judge, you gave him 3 months. My question is, do you regret it or not?
Senator, what I regret is that in a hearing about my qualifications to be a justice on the Supreme Court, we've spent a lot of time focusing on this small subset of my sentences, and I've tried to explain.
You regret that
many
we're focusing on
times.
your cases? I don't understand.
No.
In giving undue leniency to perpetuators, to aggressors of child sex crimes. These are child sex abusers. These are the worst of the worst in our community.
I'm talking about the fact that you're talking about
child pornography
7
cases?
Very serious cases.
I'm glad we agree on that. Don't you think we should be focusing on
some of which involve conduct that I sentence people to 25, 30 years.
3 months in this case, Judge. Do you regret it? You haven't answered my question yet.
Senator,
do you regret this sentence?
Senator, I would have to look at the circumstances. What I'm telling you...
You know the circumstances. We discussed it for half an hour yesterday. There's a 55-page transcript, which I'm sure you've read. You lived it. As you've emphasized to this committee over and over, you've lived it.
And he was questioning your sentencing record in. Let me address another issue that came up yesterday in the opening phase of this nomination hearing. And it's the issue involving child pornography. I want to turn to that issue because it was raised multiple times, primarily by the senator from Missouri. And he was questioning your sentencing record in child pornography cases that do not involve the production of pornographic material. They're known as non-production cases. I wanted to put some context here. The senator from Missouri has, in his tweets, said of your position on this issue, Judge Jackson has a pattern of letting child porn offenders off the hook for their appalling crimes, both as a judge and a policymaker. She's been advocating it since law school. This goes beyond soft on crime, the senator said. I'm concerned this is a record that endangers our children. I thought about his charges as I watched you and your family listening carefully yesterday, and what impact it might have had on you personally to know that your daughters, husband, parents, family, and friends were hearing the charges that your implementation of this law, sentencing, endangered children. Could you tell us what was going through your mind at that point?
Thank you, Senator.
As a mother and a judge who has had to deal with these cases, I was thinking that nothing could be further from the truth. These are some of the most difficult cases that a judge has to deal with because we're talking about pictures of sex abuse of children. We're talking about graphic descriptions that judges have to read and consider when they decide how to sentence in these cases.
Right? You said that you've been through all of this. You've looked at all of the images. You're the one who's had to endure all of it. You gave him a 3-month sentence. I just wonder if you regret it or if you stand by it. I mean, do you stand by that sentence?
Senator, in every case, I followed what Congress authorized me to do in looking to the best of my ability at all of the various factors that apply.
Listen.
He presented all of his diplomas and certificates and the things that he had done and argued, consistent with what I was seeing in the record, that this particular defendant had gotten into this in a way that was, I thought, inconsistent with some of the other cases that I had seen. Part of what a judge is doing, as required by Congress, is thinking about this case, thinking about unwarranted sentencing disparities, that's in the statute, other cases, other determinations that a judge may have made about this. I don't remember in detail this particular case, but I do recall it being unusual.
These are men who commit vulgar and heinous, cruel crimes against children, and these men who have full agency over their behavior, full agency, and choose to aggress against children. And many times these are men who are in positions of power or trusted, interpersonal relationships that they abuse and take advantage of to access these children. And once these crimes are committed against these children, it then perpetuates a lifetime of dysfunction, pain, and maladaptation in children that manifests throughout into chaos throughout the rest of our community. And that's who she's prioritizing. Once again, we need criminal justice reform in this country. We do not need criminal justice reform for sex offenders or child rapists or men who commit crimes against women and children. The whole point of installing a black woman is that she might theoretically represent the wants, the needs, and the interests of women and children in this country. And yet her first and most substantial contribution is to defend the sexual interests of men, of paraphilic men. Why is she here then? Just because, because she's got the right look? It's not about how she looks. It's not about the actual material, physical, phenotypical appearance of her. It's about the fact that she should have the life experience and the lived life experience that would inform her decision making on behalf of people, of women, of black people, black women, of all races. That it would her life experience would inform her decision making to make decisions that would be to the benefit and to the well-being and to serve the needs and the interests of underrepresented people. And she failed miserably already. This is why identity politics are so dangerous. Hold people to their record.
No one case, Senator, can stand in for a judge's
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you if you regret this sentence in this case. And it sounds like the answer is no. But I want to tell you I regret it. I regret that you gave him only 3 months. Let me read to you what you said about these kinds of cases. And in fact, to this defendant, you said, make no mistake, Mr. Hawkins, The children you saw in those pictures were not willing participants in the conduct that you witnessed. They were being forced to commit unspeakable acts of sexual violence for the pleasure of the person who was filming and for the gratification of sick people everywhere, people who apparently have no shred of empathy for what this must be doing to the children who are being abused in this way. You go on. Some of the children you saw in those pictures will never have a normal adult relationship. Some of them will turn to drugs and prostitution and other vices to try to deal emotionally with the pain that results from the torture that they have experienced. And even those who manage to lead a somewhat normal adult life say they live in constant fear of being recognized. Some people are even unable to leave their houses because once those pictures are on the internet, they are there forever. And the victims can't do anything without worrying that every person that they meet has seen them in their most vulnerable state at the most horrible time in their lives. That's your words, pages 34 and 35 of the transcript. Powerful words, Judge. I just don't understand why after saying this and believing this, you could give this guy 3 months in prison when the probation office that we've heard so much about recommended 18 months. Even the probation office recommended 18 months. Do you have anything to add?
No, Senator.
I mean, her record is not holding up. Once we hold her to the fire, she filibustered on every question. She avoided, she refused to answer. And then, of course, it was her Democratic colleagues who ran to her side and did a bunch of damage control, and she couldn't even dig it. It was like they were trying to, throw her a life raft, and she didn't even know how to take it properly.
Let me address another issue that came up yesterday in the opening phase of this nomination hearing. And he was questioning your sentencing record in child pornography cases that do not involve the production of pornographic material. They're known as non-production cases. I wanted to put some context here. The senator from Missouri has in his tweets said of your position on this issue, Judge Jackson has a pattern of letting child porn offenders off the hook for their appalling crimes, both as a judge and a policymaker. She's been advocating it since law school. This goes beyond soft on crime, the senator said. I'm concerned this is a record that endangers our children. I thought about his charges as I watched you and your family listening carefully yesterday and what impact it might have had on you personally to know that your daughters, husband, parents, family, and friends were hearing the charges that your implementation of this law, sentencing, endangered children. Could you tell us what was going through your mind at that point?
I guess is the question, how did it make her feel that she got exposed as the scumbag that she is in front of her family? I don't know. I would hope that she would be ashamed, but this doesn't seem like a sort of woman who is very ashamed, who has any sort of shame. So I wouldn't get our hopes up. At least they know who they're dealing with and who their mother is. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Senator. As a mother and a judge who has had to deal with these cases, I was thinking that nothing could be further from the truth.
But it is objectively true. You're more concerned with preserving the dignity of pedophiles than you are protecting children and your mother. It's objectively true. Nothing could be further from the truth. These are the people who are governing our nation, who are making crucial policy decisions. And we're choosing based on what someone looks like. That's a mistake. My God. If you want someone to represent black women, then cultivate the right black woman. Don't just grab any one of them. We end up with pieces of shit like this.
These are some of the most difficult cases that a judge has to deal with because we're talking about pictures of sex abuse of children. We're talking about graphic descriptions that judges have to read and consider when they decide how to sentence in these cases. And there's a statute that tells judges what they're supposed to do. Congress has decided what it is that a judge has to do in this and any other case when they sentence. And that statute doesn't say, look only at the guidelines and stop. The statute doesn't say, impose the highest possible penalty for this sickening and egregious crime. The statute says, calculate the guidelines, but also look at various aspects of this offense and impose a sentence that is, quote, sufficient but not greater than necessary to promote the purposes of punishment.
And the arrogance that I saw, the arrogance, and then just it was frustrating because she spent more time talking about how her experience of having to witness these horrible crimes. There's nothing that frustrates me more than when I hear about people complaining, oh, I don't want to look at those images. It's too much to bear. Oh, I couldn't bear to see these young children in those horrific positions and being brutally raped and taken advantage. And like, oh, it was too much for me to listen to. And she waxed poetic about how horrible it was for her to have to live through hearing in vulgar detail the crimes that were committed against these children. Well, guess what, Kentanji? There are children who lived through it as children, who were terrified, who didn't understand what was happening to them. The least you can do is look at their pain. The least you can do is to hear what they went through. You didn't have to live through that. They lived through it. They didn't get a chance to turn it off. So I don't want to hear about how it impacted you. It didn't impact you enough to influence your sentencing. Clearly it didn't impact you enough. You can talk about all you want, but if it doesn't impact your sentencing, it didn't do anything.
And in every case, when I am dealing with something like this, it is important to me to make sure that the children's perspective, the children's voices are represented in my sentencings.
Yeah, no, sorry, they weren't. The children were not represented. Shame on you. Shame on you. And who gives a fuck how your family felt when they heard you being grilled about your true history, things that you actually did. 3 months for having files and files of child pornography of young children, 8 and 9-year-olds. How dare you? You know who I care about? I care about the parents who sat there and had to listen to you give a sentence of 3 months for somebody who's dealing in child pornography. Fuck your feelings. Fuck Joe Biden. Fuck this nomination.